So tonight we're going to continue on with our series in Joshua. We're going to be looking at Joshua 3 and 4 tonight, so a total of 2 chapters. So if you want to join with me, again, we're going to be looking at Joshua 3 and 4. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to be reading just chapter 3. All right. So again, in Joshua chapter 3. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people. When you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God and the priests, who are the Levites, carrying it, you are to move out from the positions and follow it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. But keep a distance of about 1,000 yards between you and the ark. Do not go near it. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Joshua said to the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and went ahead of them. And the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. Tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. This is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will certainly drive out before you the Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites. See, the Ark of the Covenant and of the Lord of all the earth will go into the Jordan ahead of you. Now then, choose 12 from the tribes. Choose 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one from each tribe. And as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. So when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage during the harvest. Yet as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, the water from upstream stopped flowing. It piled up in a heap a great distance away at the town called Adam, the vicinity of Jehohanan, while the water flowing down to the sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. We will be going over Joshua chapter 4. I was just reading Joshua 3 for just a little extra context. Let's do a little bit of review up to this point. So number one, we saw from Joshua chapter 1 that Joshua is now in command of Israel. He is the new leader since Moses had died. After the 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, Moses was not allowed to go into the land that God had promised him because he had sinned against God. So Joshua was going to take over. Joshua was gearing up for everyone to head over into the land that God has promised them. Joshua even sent a couple spies into Jericho to look at the land, to spot out where is their weak points, what is the best strategy to attack, as well as the morale of the people in Jericho. And while the spies were there, they came across a prostitute named Rahab. She knew about the Lord and had faith in the Lord, After all, all of Jericho had heard of all the great things that the Israelites had done, even crossing the Red Sea after they had come out of Egypt. And so now we're here. Joshua is getting everyone prepped and ready to go to cross the Jordan River into the promised land. Now, one of the biggest things here is that Joshua gives orders as he tells the officers to tell the people of Israel to gear up and get ready to head over across the Jordan River, but to keep 1,000 yards distance from the Ark of the Covenant. Now, some translations might say 3,000 feet, which is for us, we understand that 3,000 feet is the same as 1,000 yards, 3 feet in 1 yard. So just 3,000 divided by 3, that equals 1,000. That's simple. Other translations might say 2,000 cubits. Now you might be wondering, what is a cubit? Well, that's the distance between your elbow to the top of your middle finger. Now, this is also a great example of how Noah built the ark. They were to use a cubit as the measurements. Now, the uniqueness about cubits is that it's different for each person. So typically it's by who the cubit is, then whoever is the king of that time frame. And so my guess, I don't have 100% evidence on this, but my guess is that they would have used 2,000 Joshua cubits. Again, that's a guess. I don't know 100% for sure. I haven't done enough research on that aspect yet. But we do know it's at least a great distance, 1,000 yards, 3,000 feet, and we can use that. Now, the reason for this distance was to give proper distance for the ark. You see, it's to respect God and his holiness. See, they weren't the only people that were allowed were the Levites. They were the only ones who are allowed to go near the ark. Now, later on, we do see some people were able to go near it, but that was with God's permission. But so they were supposed to use the Ark of the Covenant as a guide. They were to use the ark wherever the ark went. That's where the people went. Most likely, you were still able to see the ark. At least maybe there were some scouts who were still able to see the ark, but still remain at a safe distance. But again, that's a guess just to make sure that everyone is going in the right direction. And Joshua also gives the order to consecrate themselves, for people to consecrate themselves. This is to be separated. It's a readiness for servants to prepare yourself, not just in a physical state. It's a mental state. It's to separate yourselves, to get the mind right before they cross into the promised land. Now, with the crossing itself, we see this in Joshua chapter 3, verses 16 and 17, where God is telling Joshua that he is going to be exalted, that through him, that God is going to begin to exalt him to Israel. Now, the word exalt, it means to make great, to magnify. God is saying that he will magnify Joshua. However, Joshua does not turn around and say, hey guys, God's going to do an amazing thing through me. Isn't that awesome? God's going to do something awesome through me. So keep your eyes out for that. Instead of that, Joshua then says, today you will know the Lord your God is with you. What a great example of humility by a great leader, Joshua. Instead of saying, hey, look at me because God is going to exalt me, he says, hey, today you'll know that the Lord your God is with you. So as they look to prepare to cross the Jordan River, the priests are going to the edge of the waters, and the waters then stop. They come up in a heap, and the water stop flowing down river, down the rest of the Jordan. Now, what's so unique about this is that the Israelites had to continue on being 1,000 yards away from the ark. So most likely that this is not just a simple like, oh, water party, and then you can just go through it. The Israelites will most likely were still 1,000 yards downstream from the ark. How amazing is that? Still keeping 1,000 yards different. So probably even a longer distance than the Red Sea, than the parting of the Red Sea. And then as we get into Joshua chapter 4, we see stones are being used here. Now, this is not the stoning that we see from the law, where talking about, or as well as some of the things in the New Testament saying the law says that we have to stone this person because of a certain sin. This is not what it's talking about. This is 12 stones to be used as a memorial, as a remembrance of what God did on this day. You see, God told Joshua to go get the Israelites, go get 12 Israelites, one from each tribe, to take a stone and put it where the priests were standing in the middle of the Jordan. This is to be a reminder of whenever the next generation, if they cross the Jordan River, they can see these 12 stones and know what had happened there. This is to be a reminder of what God did by parting the Jordan River, stopping the flow, so then the Israelites could walk on dry ground. Now, during this set of stones, the priests were still there. So this was taking time for the people to go grab the stones and place them where the priests were. And then when that was done, the priests were able to walk out, and then the waters continued to flow. However, there were going to be 12 more stones later on. As soon as they get to Gilgal, this is where they were going to be camping. There was another set of 12 stones that were made. So that first set of stones, the ones that were going to be in the Jordan, those we can see in Joshua chapter 4, verse 9. I'm going to be starting in verse 8 for a little bit of context. So in Joshua chapter 4, starting in verse 8, so the Israelites did as Joshua commanded them. They took 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, as the Lord had told Joshua, and they carried them over with them to their camp, where they put them down. Verse 9. Joshua set out the 12 stones that had been in the middle of the Jordan at the spot where the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant and stood, and they are there to this day. So that's the first one. That's going to be in the middle of the Jordan River. And then there was going to be another set of 12 stones. We can see this one in verse 20. I'm going to be starting in verse 19 just for a little extra context. So Joshua chapter 4, verse 19 says, on the 10th day of the first month, the people went up from the Jordan and camped at Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. Verse 20, and Joshua set up at Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken out from the Jordan. He said to the Israelites, in the future, when your descendants ask their fathers, what did these stones mean? Tell them Israel crossed the Jordan on dry ground. Verse 23, for the Lord your God dried up the Jordan before you until you had crossed over. The Lord your God did to the Jordan just what he had done to the Red Sea, when he dried it up before us until we had crossed over. He did this so that all the peoples of the earth might know that the hand of the Lord is powerful, and so that you might always fear the Lord your God. So these two sets of stones were used as a reminder of what God did, the amazingness of what God did, not just at the Red Sea, but at the Jordan. Because remember, the people who came out of Egypt and crossed the Red Sea, all of them have passed away. Most likely all of them passed away, because as we learned before, that everyone who was younger than the age of 20 was still going to be alive, but everyone older than the age of 20, I believe from the book of Numbers, we see that everyone who was older than the age of 20 was going to die. They would not see the promised land. So most likely this was a new experience for these people, for this generation of Israelites, to understand that not only experience what their parents did, but something that they did on their own. This is something new as they go into the promised land. Now, as we head into our application, I just got one point for us tonight, which is all praise is to be given to God. We see that Joshua had an opportunity to boast himself, to say, hey, God is going to do something great through me. Keep your eyes out on what he's going to do to me. Instead of that, he said, the Lord, your God, is with you. Keep your eyes open. Listen for what God is going to do. You will learn that he is with you today. And also, we see two memorials. We see two sets of stones. One is in the middle of the Jordan River. The other one is at Gilgal. See, this is to be a reminder of what God did on that day, stopping the flow of a river so that people can walk on dry land. How great is our God to do something not once but twice, stopping the waters from going through so that people can walk on dry ground, not somewhat wet, not damp, but dry ground. Let us pray.